Welcome to Coffee with the Supervisor. My special guest today is Marshall Brown, and he is the Executive Director of Save the Great South Bay. Now, for anyone that lives on the South Shore, or anyone that appreciates Long Island, the Great South Bay is a tremendous bay that runs well into Nassau County and all the way out to the Narrows in Shirley. It's a wonderful bay. It has different parts of it. Eastern part of it sometimes is referred to as Bellport Bay, but it's a great bay. And you're working with an organization that goal is to save the Great South Bay. What do you mean by save?
Well, I grew up on the bay, as did you.
I did.
From Sayville.
I grew up in Sayville, yeah, right? Absolutely.
And we remember what it was. Just teeming with life, fish, shellfish.
Relatively clear.
Yes. And that was in part thanks to the millions upon millions of clams that were filtering the water. In 1976, 40% of the bay was filtered each day by the clams.
Wow.
And for generations, that's what we did. We provided half of all the hard-shell clams eaten in this country, and before that, oysters.
Blue Point oysters.
That's right. Queen Victoria loved them.
Right.
They were world famous, and they're making a comeback, as you know. But we started with my 35th high school reunion. That was in 2012. We all converged on Sayville and walked to the end of Candy Avenue with my then 11-year-old son, and hopped in at the town beach. And we were in the water maybe a split second because it was all brown and coffee colored, disgusting. And then that's all we could talk about at our reunion was what had happened to our bay and how we could bring it back. And right there and then we vowed that to form this organization, Save the Great South Bay. I was 10 weeks to the day prior to Sandy, and that changed everything. One thing that changed for the better was Sandy broke through an inlet, aka the breach out in Bellport Bay. I got a call. It was dark, power was out, the winds were dying down from Sandy. It was somebody from the Nature Conservancy, and he said, "You will not believe what happened. Sandy breached Fire Island just where it should breach. We would have paid millions of dollars to do that otherwise." And so
that used to be an old inlet.
That's right.
It was known as the old inlet.
Correct.
And now we refer to it as the new inlet. I can show you maps in my office from 1837. It clearly points out the inlet.
Well, that's how you get the port in Bellport.
Right.
Right. There was a big place for delivering timber, and actually the inlet filled in because they were bringing cobblestones in via ship in 1826, and the boat went down right in the inlet there, old inlet, filled with cobblestones. So just a matter of time before that closed. Plus, we subsequently we had other inlets closed by mostly by Robert Moses in the creating of Robert Moses State Park and Jones Beach. So that really cut down the flow in the bay. So how do we bring back the bay? How do we get the bay teeming with life again?
And part of the problem, they say, large part of the problem is the nitrogen input that's coming into the bay from our cesspools, from our fertilizers, etc. So talk about bay-friendly lawns.
Mm-hmm. Well, you make a great point. The bay-friendly lawns has to do with returning native plantings to our properties, creating a little wilderness in our yards, as Teddy Roosevelt had exhorted us to. It's not just planting a native tree. It's putting together an arrangement of plants, trees, grasses, and shrubs that would be in our yard if we weren't there, and that restores habitat. That's good for a variety of insects and the birds and amphibians and all that would eat all that. I mean, we've lost 50% of our songbirds globally since 1964, and about 50% of our bugs too.
And what is that attributable to?
Habitat loss. And how do you get habitat loss? Well, you plant ornamentals instead of native plants. You have invasive plants. These plants are invisible to our native insects and birds, and so very particular niches in which these animals live disappear. And so if we want our songbirds back, we have to restore our native habitats. So bay-friendly yards, it's not only...
And not fertilized.
Right. Native plantings don't need any extra fertilizer, pesticides, or water. They belong there. There's no extra effort to keep them there. And that's what we're striving for. So we believe also that a native planting is inherently more beautiful than something you would create artificially. When we want beauty, we look for untouched nature. What we have now is very artificial, very sterile, and you can see the lifelessness as you drive down the street.
So, not fertilizing our lawns heavily, relying more on native plants and not plants that are not native to Long Island, and just taking care of our environment. In fact, I think we have many tributaries that flow into the Great South Bay, that you've talked about having creek defenders.
Yes.
Tell me what a creek defender does.
We have the Bay-Friendly Yards program, and we also have the Creek Defender program. And in a similar vein, what we're trying to do is restore these green native corridors along our creeks, the red maple, the sassafras, the tupelo, native forests, swamp forests, if you will. All that biome filters the groundwater before it reaches the creek or river. Once it gets in the creek and in the bay, it's too late. So by restoring habitat along there, we're improving water quality. Did it with the Bay-Friendly Yards. We're catching the water before it goes off the property, down the street, into the grate, and into the bay. So
Creek defenders.
Creek defenders. We have 16 communities on the South Shore. Copeg, Massapequa, Lindenhurst, Bablin, Oakdale, Sayville, Blue Point, Patchogue, Bellport, and everything in between. And we have some 14,000 people in our group, and in each community we have a Creek Defender now. And what happens on Creek Defender Day is that there's a general cleanup involving the schools and the local civic groups, local businesses. And there we also are planting these native plantings. So,
particularly eelgrass.
The eelgrass is something that's more bay-related, but what we want to do is improve the water quality coming out into the bay so that we can start to see more in the way of eelgrass, which is the native habitat for our shellfish and our finfish. What happened in 1985 with all that nitrogen, massive brown tide. It covered the whole bay for...
I believe that was the first year.
First of a really big brown tide,
wow.
Yeah. And what happened was it shaded the bottom. All the eelgrass died, and over 6,000 people lost their livelihoods from one year to the next. Clamming fell off by 99%, and the fish that were so abundant, they were gone. They need the eelgrass, so we need to bring that back. We can only bring it back really by improving water quality.
And one of the ways to do that, of course, is to promote wetlands, because they are nature's natural filter. One of the problems with wetlands and promoting is their ability to protect nature is somewhat limited when man steps in and sprays.
I'm glad you brought that up.
Things like methoprene, which has a really toxic effect on aquatic life. And talk a little bit about what we're doing to try to convince people who do these sprayings, Suffolk County Vector Control, not to use things so toxic as methoprene?
Well, as with the our yards, if you take something out of the food web, then the whole thing starts to fall apart. So here's the lowly mosquito, and
Can be annoying at times.
Absolutely. I spent
Particularly when it buzzes your ear.
most of my youth swatting one or another. A lot more bugs back then.
Yes.
But what happens with the methoprene is it targets mosquito larvae. Well, mosquitoes are in the arthropod family, along with crabs and lobsters and dragonflies, which eat the mosquitoes.
And we've had lobster die off in the Long Island Sound.
Yes.
And some of that has to do with the spraying of methoprene.
That's been the allegation, but more. I'll tell you a little story. And actually, this is part of my testimony before the county legislature. I went down to South Carolina at Kiowa Island. You golf at all?
No, but I know.
But you know it's a big golfing place.
Yes.
Okay. So surrounded by marsh, South Carolina in the summer, and it's just getting towards dusk. We're on the veranda, dining, a huge restaurant overlooking the golf course and the ocean there, and all of a sudden, like that, because it's dusk and there are mosquitoes. And we said, could we please move inside? And they sort of took their time. So, yes, we'll see if there's any table available for you. 10 minutes later, the dragonflies appear. Zing, 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 zing. Then the bats come. It was almost like a scene out of Apocalypse Now with the copters coming over the hill. And we dined perfectly fine the rest of the evening. That's a sign of a living marsh. What we've done is we've degraded our marshes, first with the mosquito ditches, and then with this spraying policy, which supposedly is about disease control, but all the diseases are carried by freshwater mosquitoes that fly maybe 100 feet. So you should be checking out your gutters and your bird baths. It's not at the beach.
The saltwater mosquito, right?
Yeah.
And it's so interesting with the marsh. When they ditched the marsh, the idea was to drain the marsh so it wouldn't be standing water. But unless you maintain those ditches, which the county has not, they actually become standing water and they become breeding grounds for the mosquito. And we feel compelled to use sprays that are so damaging to aquatic life. I mean, I'm a town supervisor now, but in 2006, I led an effort with a fellow legislator who is now also a supervisor, Jay Schneiderman, who is currently the supervisor of Southampton, to have the county stop spraying methoprene. There were only 2 of us out of 18. We both represented the East End. I was the North Fork. He was the South Fork and the Eastern Brookhaven. And it didn't happen. And they're still spraying it today, despite the reports that we receive about how really toxic it is to aquatic life.
And it's been banned in Connecticut and other places.
Yes.
But yet Long Island continues to hold on to this. Now, the good news is up in Albany, there's a vote to potentially that would ban it. It got through the assembly, got through the environmental committee, 28-0. Now it's in the rules committee.
Well, that's good news. I hope the state does act on it. I wish the county had addressed this problem much sooner because it's caused a lot of damage. But let's go back. Save the Great South Bay. You're a not-for-profit 501c3.
501c3.
How do people get involved? And we're going to put your information up on the screen as you speak, but tell us how people would get involved and save the Great South Bay.
Well, first off, we have our Facebook group. If you're on Facebook, there we are, 14,000 strong. Lots of great information, lots of great contributions. And we all care about where we're from. So I don't ask somebody when they're hauling a mattress out of a creek with me who they voted for.
No. Well, you're an apolitical, non-political organization dedicated to environmental improvement of our bay.
And then there's our website, of course. A lot of great information there. You can download off the homepage.
And the webpage is?
www.savethegreatsouthbay.org. There's an ebook called Creating a Bay-Friendly Yard, which is there for downloading. We have an active calendar whether it's a cleanup with a local creek defender, or we had the Great South Bay paddleboard race coming up August 25th, I believe, and then the Mayor's Charity Regatta out of Long Island Yacht Club in Babylon. That's September 21st. And
you're involved in those events.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. So is there any number that someone could call to get involved?
Yes. That would be 646-827-0733. That'll get right to us.
And we'll put that up on the board. So before we close off, is there one message you want to leave us about saving the Great South Bay?
Be good local stewards. Understand that what you do in your community can really make a difference in what's happening in the Bay, whether it's in your own yard or whether it's in the creeks that otherwise pass through your community anonymously. There's some 36 creeks and rivers that feed the Bay. We need to heal them. It's the Bay is a symptom. It's the mainland that's sick. So cure the mainland, cure the Bay.
Well, Marshall Brown, Executive Director of Save the Great South Bay, thank you for making time and being on Coffee with the Supervisor.
My pleasure.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.